Just starting this video out by giving you timestamps. I hate when people make big-ass videos and act like you want to watch all of it. Here's the timestamps to the specific sections, you know. Here I talk about the show, here I talk about the game, etc, etc. There you go, skip to what do you want to watch or watch the whole way through. I wrote it as one big thing, but you can skip around, it doesn't really matter. Okay, let's move on to the first one. Tales of the TMNT. Now, I would start with the film, but I've already talked about it at length in another video, Brain Dumps. It's also on my channel. If you care at all about what's going on with the movie, you can go watch that. For this video, I'm just going to talk about the show. So, starting off with its detractors. You know, it's been really strange seeing people constantly saying, "This isn't what TMNT is about," when they themselves don't understand what TMNT has always been about. A joke. The original comics themselves, and the artists, Eastman and Laird, put effort in, and they had good stories. They were not a joke as art, but there was obviously plenty of humor in its absurdity, and the name alone, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Every single word makes it a more wildly insane premise. And the original comics themselves are rooted in satirical elements of other kind of hardcore, really serious comics. You know, it's basic trivia, like the Daredevil has the hand as enemies, so the Ninja Turtles fight the foot. Daredevil sensei was Stick, so of course the Turtles are trained by a sensei named Splinter. There's stuff like that. And so for so many weirdo adults and edgy teenagers to screech on and on about The Last Ronin being the only good thing about Turtles, and that Batman crossover the last time we saw the real Turtles. Did you people forget the 80s cartoon? It was a self-aware non-stop cheese fest made to sell toys. Who do you think okayed that? The original creators. They didn't even sell out or anything. They retained the rights to their property. They didn't sell it immediately. They cared about it. But they knew it wasn't something that was so serious that it couldn't be a joke or fun for everyone. I mean, the 2003 series was a lot more focused on story and serialized. It had a lot of the stuff that happened in the original comics going on in the show. And honestly, it kind of blurred the lines of what was appropriate for kids to watch. Even having a banned episode, probably episodes, and some graphic scenes throughout the show that honestly, I don't know if I'd let my kid watch. I'd let them watch the rest of it, but shit, man, they get a little out of hand sometimes. All that being said, even this show still retained a lot of humor and light moments. The 2012 series, honestly, struck a perfect balance of humor and good storytelling to me, showing off extremely impressive action set pieces and animation, with great use of the fact that the Turtles were now in the third dimension, so they move the camera around in really interesting ways, and they use 2D assets to kind of give you that old Teen Titans feeling, you know, from little anime eyes and big heads and stuff like that. It was fun. It didn't even do away with the violence and horror elements of Ninja Turtles, which, regardless of what parents think, kids love violence and horror, and so do adult fans of animation. Rise of the TMNT was a bit of an embarrassing misstep that was more of an attempt to capture some of that Teen Titans Go audience with horrible, outdated, even at the time of its writing, humor that relied either on sad references to memes and outdated teen lingo, or painfully overused jokes that are literally banned from being used in other shows.
Like a boss! Like a boss! Bring it like a boss!
This is the most obnoxious thing I've ever experienced in my life.
Yeah, it's full of this exact humor in every minute of every episode. While fluid, the overly flashy animation had horrible staging. They kind of just always put them in this nebulous arena where they could do anything, and there's nothing to really play with. One of the only times that they had good choreography was when they specified they were in a construction site, which ended up with just making the action a nonsensical mess that matched the terrible, non-existent storyline. The writers, or maybe not even writers, maybe it was just storyboard artists, I don't really know who was to blame for the writing, both the humor and the general plot and everything. They mistook soft world building for no world building, ending up with a pretty miserable show. And after that got cancelled, the future of the Turtles felt uncertain, which resulted in me being extremely happy with the Tales of the TMNT's wonderful course correction. The point of TMNT is to be interesting, fun, and malleable. It can be serious, like the first film, the original comics, the 2003 series for the first 5 seasons, and the IDW comics. It can be jokes and fun, like the original cartoon, or it can be a mixture of both, like the 2012 cartoon. Tales of the TMNT is leaning a bit more on the jokey side and has decided to explore the Turtles as individuals for this first season, purposely separating them from each other so they can find out who they are outside of their family. Something I'm sure a lot of kids and teens can relate to and will find fun. And something that will bring adults back to when they were teenagers and, figuring things out. Action and art style? Fucking gorgeous, man. Unlike Rise, there is so much fucking delicious choreography and staging in this show that makes it feel like it belongs in a film. See, like this scene with Donatello, he's going through an awesome little set piece, so his movement is a bit limited, He's in a train. He can't just be flying around, throwing random magic balls and doing whatever he wants. He has to account for the environment, and sometimes he even uses the environment, like in old Jackie Chan movies and stuff like that. But the action isn't just action for the sake of it. Look at right here, when he flips the bow staff, right? He does a little twirly in the air. I'm not going to pretend I'm a martial arts expert, I don't know what you call that, but he twirls his bow staff up in the air, and that flair that he added to his movement caused the robot to look upward and notice the laptop, which in the context of that episode was extremely important. And then the robot starts trying to destroy it. That's when action moves the plot forward. Stuff like Rise was just flashy and nonsensical for the sake of it, and that's the reason it didn't work there. In this show, everything is always purposeful, and it's beautiful as well. Beauty isn't just generic either. It's not just neon lights or straight edges and stuff. It's purposefully grungy, it's purposely graffiti-esque, all while maintaining a sense of cohesion with humans and mutants as well as their environments. Something that the 2012 show with its humans, like the humans had really kind of creepy teeth and looked like dolls, which never really worked compared to the cool like mutant designs that they did way better. And Rise, with both the environments and all character designs, struggled to blend in with the Turtles and the world of the yokai. None of that really ever worked together. In the 80s show never cared, and the 2003 show was a lot like the original comics. Some stuff meshed well, some stuff didn't. But in terms of Tales of the TMNT, it all works. But just like not every art style will work for everyone, not all the humor in this show works for everyone either. It is nowhere near as bad as Rise's dialogues and jokes.
Sorry, Kendra. Looks like your computer's... Oh, wait for it. Wait for it. Crashed. Bam! I should write for the news.
Gosh, oh my gosh! Splinter's a zombie!
But there are a lot of jokes in this that are fun for adults and teenagers, not just for very young kids that don't know any better. Annoying or not, the kids they got to voice all the characters were allowed to improvise and revise dialogue, much like they were allowed to do in the film, resulting in a lot more authentic sounding teen dialogue. Sure, they can be a little annoying or cringy even, but I mean, that's what teenagers are like. That's what we were all like at one point, and that's what this series is trying to achieve, focusing on the teenage in Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, rather than being different for the sake of it with no actual depth to it.
Nailed it!
So I'm not being over defensive by any means. It's not perfect. The show does lose steam in its second half, but going back to the writing for a little bit before talking about the steam, when there are emotional moments in the show, they actually feel earned. The improvising adds authenticity and distinct personalities from one another without having to be simplistically or radically different from one another with the Turtles, like in the 80s show, and especially not just making them all the exact same character like in Rise. Though the movie and show do make the obnoxious and weird mistake of having Leo crush on April, which, I mean, come on guys, didn't you learn from 2012 with Donatello how poorly that works? It's just really fucking weird and uncomfortable. Anyway, Seeing them interact with new and different versions of the old characters is really fun. Like I said before, we get to know them all as individuals in this show, and how they deal with situations when they can't depend on their brothers, helping them with their weak spots. Donatello learning how to stop thinking and just acting like Raphael is prone to do, and vice versa. When Raphael is trapped and injured with a broken rib, he realizes his only way of getting out is to reason and try to talk to his captors, leading him to learning the value of not always acting on instinct. If the entire show was of the quality of this first half, I'd be way more excited talking about it, but I did mention the show loses its steam in the latter half of its 12 episodes. It feels a lot more meandering, with a generic let's destroy the city type situation that is nowhere near as nuanced or fun as the first 6 episodes that were really expanding upon everyone's personalities. The one thing I can't say is that its choreography, staging, and animation are slacking in this half. They still come up with really cool scenarios and areas to fight in, such as a flooded supermarket with an electric eel mutant lurking in the waters, or dealing with weird underwater creatures in the sewer. The weak part of this latter half is the framing device of which the tale is being told by Splinter. But instead of hiring a voice actor, they have Raphael imitating Splinter throughout the whole thing, since in canon he's apparently only speaking vermin to better communicate with his cockroach girlfriend? I don't know, it's pretty awkward. It could have worked better if all the turtles took a turn imitating their dad to tell their own tales, but it's only Raph that voices them. That being said, the show does end on an incredible note, with an amazing fight that genuinely makes up for a lot of the failings in the second arc. If you refuse to watch the show, I implore you to just give the first 2 episodes a try, and especially if that doesn't work, just watch the scene where the turtles fight a character named Goldfin on a ship. I'm sure it'll change your mind and let you give it a chance. To sum up, the 2012 series met with incredible success. It had a pretty decent run, and it had a really good story to tell. And by the time that they were done with said story, they were telling really good one-off arcs. They sold toys, they did what they had to do. They reignited interest in the Ninja Turtle. Well, with the trends that were going on at the time, such as Teen Titans Go kind of dominating all of cable, Rise got a lot of money and hard work dumped into it, but unfortunately resulted in a really bad show, especially after such a good show preceding it. Rise is a show that actually forgot what the TMNT franchise is about. It didn't care about plot, characters, writing, cohesive art styles. All it cared about was spectacle and showing off how fluid they can make characters move. After that blunder, this new show has shown how change is good only when done with a solid vision in mind. It's experimenting with genuine interest in exploring ideas rather than just being different for the sake of it like Rise. Its animation is fantastic, but doesn't forget to have sensible choreography and creative locations to fight in. The animation style apparently does get some flack, like I said, but again, unlike the previous 2 shows, or hell, even every other show, its style is very consistent so far. Every new mutant and human feels like they belong to the same world the turtles do. So please give it a shot if you have Paramount Plus. I hope it comes to more streaming services. I especially recommend it if you have kids or teens and you want to watch something with them. But don't feel weird watching it by yourself. I say that because I think about the aforementioned edgy adults and teens who hate seeing the turtles be teenagers and not be 100% serious and dark and gritty. It makes them feel insecure that they're watching something that's not targeted at them. It's like being embarrassed to play Sorry with your family, or a Mario game, or a Pokemon game. When something friendly to all audiences is done well, it can be enjoyed by anyone. It's a big reason I respect family-friendly art that is beloved by everyone, rather than only being for kids. It's okay to enjoy things that aren't bloody, profane, or targeting your specific age group. Try to remember that, and maybe you won't be so harsh on Tales. Well, now that I've talked about the show, on to the game. I love 3D platformers, so when I saw the initial screenshots and trailers for this game, I noticed there was a lot of platforms and jumping around, and there ended up even being wall climbing abilities, lots of jump pads, time challenge, pizza delivery.
No!
Oh wait, no? These are just short sections of the game?
Yes!
They wouldn't even make up more than an hour or 2 of the near 20-hour playtime if all instances of platforming were put together.
Yes!
Oh, okay, well, I guess it's not a 3D platformer. To be fair, I guess it did look more like a Pac-Man World 3 situation, a 3D beat-em-up platformer, fusion. I love beat-em-ups. They range from the equivalent of background noise for your hands to in-depth combo-filled slobber knockers with amazing visuals, intense and fast-paced music, and endless fun with friends that doesn't require everyone to use said combos, just to be able to pay attention and adapt to different enemy types. They don't even all have to be fast-paced though. Some like the legendary River City Ransom still holds up to this day. Genres like hack and slashers or spectacle fighters are just evolutionary branches of 2D beat-em-ups. God knows plenty of those games get a lot of praise. So this being a 3D beat-em-up could be lots of oh, it's like the platforming sections?
Yes.
There's more time dedicated to it, but it's in very short bursts and not the main focus of the game, even though there are skill trees for everyone. Okay, then what the hell is it then? What's that? That anime RPG game? That has a lot of like graphic novel shit in it? Wait, is this TMNT game an RPG?
No.
Then what the hell is it? What is it then? See, that's the main problem with this game. You know how people refer to this New York City as the melting pot of the United States? Well, that's what must have been the main inspiration for this game's creative direction, because it is one huge pot of different gameplay genres poured into a pot without a thought as to whether or not those genres work together, nor whether or not to focus on one genre being the glue that holds everything together. You have 3D beat-em-up sections that last less than a few minutes, loading screens, then awkward PS2 era cutscenes filled to the tits, with awkward silences and dialogue that don't trigger until a character stops moving or emoting, all in-engine and severely limited in terms of movement and animation. Back to loading screens. After that, you have these large empty areas with 1 or 2 people in it, and once you talk to a person with a time icon over their head, you go back into the loading screens and now you're in a socialization game with all manner of folks, mutants and humans. The mutants are being introduced in the show and the movie, but all the humans are brand new characters we've never met before, trying to seem as if they've always been around. The cutscenes finish playing out without any input from you at all. You get no choices in terms of where the conversations go, so you're kind of just sitting there watching cutscenes, waiting for the goddamn next loading screen to finish, and then you're right back to the main map, noticing there's time elements to the game. Since you've been given so much time, you don't really have to pick and choose who you talk to. You can talk to everyone, and are you noticing the problem here? There's no good place to start with this game. It's a hodgepodge of shit, with unbearably long loading times in between every single instance of anything. Cutscene, you gotta load for an entire minute on average. I timed it. The cutscenes ended, another minute long loading screen for the level, then you play a minute or two of either platforming or extremely boring and uninspired literal tiny circular square arenas of fighting enemies, then back to loading screens for either another cutscene or the next part of the level. Like I said before, I timed it. For instance, this loading screen I have in the background while I talk, this is the average for nearly 20 or so loading screens I tested at random. Right now your eyes must be so fucking bored, but can you imagine having to wait in silence with your friend for minutes at a time just so the game can load? In 2024, my computer can run and load Elden Ring just fine. I doubt Mutants Unleashed is needing more firepower than that fucking game. It genuinely becomes the biggest problem in a game full of problems. You dread loading any new area. You're tired of the loading screen before it even shows up every time you approach the end of a level or conversation. I don't know what they did to this team where they rushed as usual. It's not like they don't know how to make games. They made the game Hard and Slash a great game. This though? Well, let's continue on by talking about the main aspect of this game, which is honestly more the side stories and cutscenes than anything else. The plot itself is standard fare as far as superhero plots go. Now that the Turtles have set a precedent of the mutants not being a menace, other mutants are coming out of the woodworks, dubbed Mubies by the Turtles. Though friendly at first, they begin reigns of terror for apparently no reason. With these rash of attacks, New York City's put under curfews and shuts down school just when the Turtles were finally entering their new semester. As they wonder what's going on with the Mubies, two of the Turtles' friends, Bebop and Rocksteady, seem to get aggressive just out of nowhere, and the Turtles eventually figure out that someone's been poisoning the water hole. If it's not water, it's gas or a virus, and funnily enough, this disease that's affecting mutants and turning them into violent lunatics becomes all three. As the plot progresses, the Turtles' efforts constantly get thwarted by nature being a fickle and complicated bitch that loves to muddy up the waters. The tainted water contains pheromones that drive mutants wild, and it evolves into an airborne virus. Again, standard fare mostly makes sense. There's actually a funny reason the turtles themselves aren't infected. It's because, accurate to most teenagers, they live off of Mountain Dew and rarely drink actual water. While this is kind of funny, it doesn't really explain why some of the other mutants don't go feral, like Splinter or Mondo aren't really affected. The rest of the plot, though, is solid enough, and, little plot holes don't bother me too much. The true meat is in the stuff between the cutscenes for the overarching story. These side stories with new characters are actually pretty interesting, with the exception of 2. There's Emily, a young girl who's trying out for the Paralympics and is supported by Raphael and Genghis the Frog, who teach her how to be a better swimmer and be more confident in herself. Her and Raph have some fun chemistry. Then there's Maz, a young boy interested in drones who's apparently friends with Donatello. Probably from school, I guess. They have an interesting relationship due to showing the differences between brothers who don't get along or hide secrets from each other, as Maz does, contrasted to Donatello, who, while not sharing a hive mind with his brothers, shares everything with them and gets along with them well. The writers attempt a similar thing with a barista named Alshon, but it doesn't work nearly as well. He is introduced by forcefully giving the turtles the wrong drinks, claiming he'll get them to enjoy coffee no matter what, which would piss me the fuck off, but the turtles are too nice to say no, and get involved with helping him out with altruistic deeds such as beating homeless newbies who are eating thrown out foods from Alshon's friend's restaurant. Real heroic stuff. Alshon seems to have loving and hardworking parents who raised enough money to get him into a New York college, but he dropped out in secret to become a fucking barista. He didn't tell his parents, and I guess he just lives off their money while he plays around as a barista? They tried to juxtapose him hiding this douchebaggery to the turtles completely trusting their own dad, Splinter, with almost everything. Though it really comes off more as selfish, and as soon as Alshon tells his parents, they immediately support him, buy him a chain restaurant, and he also gets the turtles to like coffee. Aside from all this, he's just a very boring character. It's like seeing a coworker you hate get a promotion and special treatment. It's just insufferable. Speaking of Milktoad's boring characters, there's Volvi. Not that one. Some random rich kid who wants to start a podcast, so he's immediately unlikable, as well as sporting a very punchable face. It does make sense that he'd end up being Mikey's character to interact with, since in all iterations of this universe so far, Mikey is definitely the least interesting and has the least going on. They just set up a podcast, do Let's Plays, and it's just really boring. Though they are outliers, like I said. These are the 2 that are bad, because Leonardo's story of heading a team at the behest of a CEO named Toby, that one's not that bad. This is an interesting little story because it helps with this less assertive version of Leonardo find more confidence in leading people, by giving him practice with leading strangers. If he can get strangers to listen to him, that confidence will bleed over into his brothers falling in line better when they're in battle. There's a few other characters like this and are decent fun, but again, these entire scenarios are marred by a lack of agency of the player. We don't have a choice in what to say or do with these new characters, so every time you see a notification on your map that serves as a game's travel system and level selector, you're effectively clicking on a button to play a cutscene rather than going to go interact with anything. And aside from that, in terms of writing, there's not too much more to say other than some inconsistencies, such as in this game, Splinter and Scumbag getting divorced immediately in the game, when in the show and the movie they were very much in love. But other characters like Wingnut and Leatherhead are still wonderfully voiced and retain their characteristics from the show. Plus, again, it was great hearing Splinter have a voice again in this game, and he has a fair amount of great lines too. I hope they keep the same actor for future seasons of the show, because, again, you can't really have a character that important just not be voiced at all. Anyway, alright, like I mentioned with the show, this game is pretty fucking gorgeous. The game itself starts with a nice little menu, gliding shot that leads into the turtle's lair. I appreciate menus that aren't just static screens with solid colored backgrounds. The UI elements and menus are all really fun. I mean, look at this map! Or the skill trees. It's all really nice looking and emulates the feeling of the movie and show really well. Even your silhouette when behind objects is scratchy and moving around. The character portraits when talking are great, but why does Mikey look like he's on the verge of tears so often? Anyway, yeah, aside from how awkward the in-engine cutscenes are, that I mentioned before reek of PS2 era licensed game cutscenes, the game is full of style and flash. Unfortunately though, there is a bit too much style and definitely way too much flash, which I'll get into in a bit. See, this game is so frustrating because the visuals show, unlike other licensed games and a lot of Ninja Turtle games, these developers were genuinely trying to create a really unique experience. The problems are the fact that everything they try is half-baked, with the strongest stuff in the game being dialogue and cutscenes. The plot is solid. For the most part, the dialogue is fun and gets some solid laughs, though it doesn't feel nearly as organic as the show or movie, so it can be a bit awkward, but nowhere near as bad as Rise with out-of-date type humor. The show aspect also kind of sucks because you don't get to choose what your characters say, ruining the potential of having to know what the right things to say are, and ending up with more varied conversations. It's not like they're paying voice actors to do anything in these sections, so why not beef them up? The conversations we do see, with the exceptions of the coffee shop douche and podcaster kid, are pretty interesting and show differences the turtles have with people, not only due to them being mutants, but due to everyone having different family dynamics from their friends. Having choices would have made the player want to replay the game and see more dialogue, but with these load times and gameplay, I'm almost kind of thankful they didn't flesh this out. Either way, it was disappointing. Then there's the beat 'em up aspect, which is a total fucking mess and has only one redeeming quality: the fact that you have skill trees to add depth to the turtle. All the turtles themselves feel distinct from one another, which is, I guess, a second good thing. The jumping feels good. Okay, a third. And, okay, no, yeah, never mind, it was just 3 things, but still. There's a parry, a dodge roll, a dash, I don't know, but other than those aspects, this is where we go back to what I meant by having too much style come up. The screen is an uncontrollable and indecipherable mess. There's so many flashing particle effects. Enemies and the turtles are both swinging around huge swaths of colored blurs with each attack. Every hit you take flashes the screen red, and all of this combined makes you lose total sight of where the hell you even are. Even if you do manage to find a turtle-looking creature in this menagerie of mutant nonsense, you won't be sure if it's you or your second player. That's also if the game didn't randomly feel like teleporting one of you to the other. The single player isn't much better either, by the way. It's just as stilted and confusing as to where to focus the camera, only slightly less worse because there isn't another person desperately fighting you for the camera's attention. On top of all of that, there's this auto-lock feature you can't turn off, which essentially renders this game brain dead because you have nothing to do but press dodge and attack, and the game will do the rest for you. No need to have to read attack patterns or focus in on special enemies. Just let the auto lock on move you like a marionette. Then you go on to that time management system that I mentioned kind of quickly, which is just completely moot because they give you so much time that you can do every activity comfortably without ever running out of time to do main missions. The side activities like delivering pizza and Master Splinter's weird synthwave dojo activities all cap out at only 5 levels each, so halfway through the game they're already completely used up and gone. Again, any of the fights you have end in seconds with or without broken rage mechanics or combos. Oh yeah, there's rage mechanics and combos. And anyone who likes beat 'em ups is going to want a fast-paced game, but a game that has more time dedicated to loading screens and dialogue is going to stop playing this game before they even beat the first chapter of it. And aside from the game being a kind of hobbled together mess, the biggest problem is glitches, bugs, and invisible walls. This game is one of the most unpolished things I've played in a long time. And I race dog shit games every Sunday with my buddy Ethan. Ninja Breadman tier shitty, so I don't say this lightly. This game is unacceptably broken. Hitboxes are too big or too small. Invisible walls trap you inside of tiny boxes, which resulted in one of 2 softlocks for us while playing. Characters launch themselves across entire maps or glitch right through floors. All of this is not helped by the fact that the levels themselves aren't very well designed, often leading you into awkward places where you suddenly hit an invisible wall, or just look at this right here. With this camera angle, why the hell would I think this water is dangerous? Which brings me to the point that this game goes way, way too far in the reusing of levels. It honestly feels like there are only 4 or 5 levels across this entire 20-hour adventure. 15 hours if you don't count the fucking loading screens. But in all seriousness, the levels are constantly reused. The only differences are starting you from the opposite side of where you spawned last time, adding seasonal decorations, or just setting it at night. It's insanely lazy and cheap feeling for a game that's asking for $40 fucking dollars. Sadly, this has all coalesced by the last half of the game. Just dreading to play any more of it. So was Snakeroot, who I forced to play this with me. We groaned at every fight, every tiny section of platforming, any cutscene that popped that by the end we weren't even listening to. We were just reading and skimming just to get through it. The game even makes that annoying mistake of having a fake out ending. So just when you think the game is finally over, hits you with a secondary final boss. that was shorter than the loading screens leading up to it. We were so miserable that I just have to say that almost everything has potential. Even when something has good elements, they aren't saving graces. They're just things to take into account when you try again. Because if my player 2 is listening to podcasts, watching videos, eating, and playing other games while I miserably wait for your game to end, then the game is not only a bad multiplayer game, it's just a bad game. And that ending itself for the game is just so sad and pathetic. Not the one with the secret final boss, but the first final boss. This final boss kind of summed up the game perfectly. We used a rage mechanic from Raphael and destroyed, or maybe eviscerated is a more fitting word, the boss, and she died so goddamn fast, the game actually glitched out. It seems at some point Bebop and Rocksteady show up to support you with health pizza, but since the boss was already beaten, the dialogue of them talking and the cutscene of the boss dying overlapped, leading us to not being even able to hear what was happening in the climax of the fucking game. And like I mentioned earlier, they extended the pain of this final boss fight with a secondary for realsies boss that died just as quickly. Oh man, just what a shit show. There's a lot of stuff I left out, like the introduction of a changing difficulty mechanic that increases with your victories and lowers with your losses, some character stuff, and things like the music being inoffensive at worst and kinda cute at best, you being able to call in brothers with special moves like the rage mechanic that I've been mentioning throughout. I don't know, man, it's just a really draining game, and by the end of this, I wasn't sure if I wanted to make a trilogy of reviews focusing on the turtles. But I got revitalized by the next two, especially the last one, which was an amazing treat to replay. But for now, in terms of Mutants Unleashed, all I'll say is do not buy this game, especially not for fucking $40. I'm not sure if they ever plan on fixing the bevy of bugs or shortening those godforsaken loading screens, but even for $15, I'd recommend buying any other notable indie game. A weird, creative, and beautiful game that I could not recommend to anyone. It really is a shame, but hey, that's just the way it goes with a lot of licensed games. Even with potential, they usually seem rushed along and unpolished. Go buy Shredder's Revenge instead of this if you really need a Ninja Turtles fix. That game's a fucking masterpiece, but I'll talk about that later. For now, we head on to TMNT, Splintered Fate. Originally released in 2023 for Switch and Apple devices, Splintered Fate takes place in its own unique TMNT continuity, which means I don't have any specific piece of media to review before talking about it. Nor does it have anything to represent, so I can go straight into talking about the game. Lucky me. The most I've heard is that there's some heavy IDW inspiration, but I'm only like 20 issues into the IDW comics. There's a lot of stuff to read out there, so there wasn't much that I noticed personally. Okay, let's get straight into it. I don't think it's a hot take to say Hades is one of the best games in recent history, so when I saw there was going to be a Hades-inspired Ninja Turtles game, I got pretty excited. But I personally waited to see if there would be a Steam port. I mean, even Sony games are getting Steam ports nowadays, so I was like, you know, I don't like the Switch, and I would rather get a Cactus Cinema than use an Apple product, so I'm glad I waited, though it took its sweet time. Nearly a year after its original release to release on Steam. Coincidentally, only a month after Mutants Unleashed, which is what inspired me to make this video in the first place. I won't comment on the non-Steam versions of the game, but I did hear the Steam port fixed a lot of bugs, so there's that. The game opens on Leonardo training up on the rooftops by himself, in a tutorial doubling as the story's intro, which is pretty nice. He's lamenting his brother's lack of interest in joining him in said training, when he's suddenly attacked by the Foot Clan. Once defeated, he keeps finding knickknacks of the spiritual kind until he receives a distress call from April, telling him that Splinter has vanished. After this call's dropped, Leo's ambushed by the Shredder himself, and as villains always do, he talks about how he could kill Leonardo if he really wanted to, but just lets him go instead. But this time not in a normal way. A portal rips open in front of Leo and sucks him in, and then he appears back at the lair. After some deliberation and the gang telling Leo that Splinter disappeared the same way as he reappeared into the lair, they decide that it's time to act, and yeah, they do that a bunch of times. They act. That's about it for the story, you know, I'm not gonna lie, there's not even much to spoil, in all honesty. It's really disappointing as a standalone story. But as a TMNT fan who's used to some of the wildest shit I've seen in fiction, this is beyond milquetoast, man. They characterize the boys well enough, establishing what these versions of them are, kind of like. The voice actors do a good job, especially Mikey's. I really like his voice.
Totally! And don't you owe us a trophy, dude?
Donnie and Leo, while good, sound a bit too alike for my taste. They do have separate voice actors, but I don't know, is it just me?
We're in this together. What can I say? I take multitasking to a whole new level.
If your TMNT autism happens to intersect with the much better known Sonic autism, you're not going to be able to accept Roger Craig Smith as Raphael.
It's a dirty job, and I'm the one to do it.
No copyright law in the universe is going to stop me!
Better not be any scrap in this pizza.
Introducing Pizza Hut's new Ultimate Stuffed Crust Pizza.
It does feel like he's going a bit more Bostonian than Brooklyn, but it's not like I'm an expert on the differences, so what do I know?
Stockman should have made you better.
Nobody understands cricket. You gotta know what a crumpet is to understand cricket.
Everyone else is a bit of a mixed bag. Casey sounds a lot like the Casey from 2003.
Casey Jones, off the bench.
I'm putting you punks out of business permanently.
Angel's an adult and apparently carries the mantle of nobody? With the most foul-looking dog shit costume I've ever seen. She's fine enough with the few lines that she's given. I'd say Karai's VA is the one that really stands out because she doesn't really sell her intensity too much. But I do like Shredder and Splinter's voice actors. Voice actors aside though, none of these characters get much in terms of personality past being a villain and Splinter being a loving father and, you know, Casey and Angel are allies and so is April. The Turtles also spout really hackneyed dialogue about brotherhood and getting Splinter back and having hope. It gets pretty tiring, and it feels like filler that was supposed to be replaced with more interesting dialogue, which leaves me pretty unsatisfied considering I never really felt connected, nor like I got to know any of these characters. I do want to comment on the dialogue, but that's unfortunately something this game is lacking in. I mentioned earlier that this game is Hades with a Ninja Turtle skin on it, but I'm gonna try not to mention Hades at all because, you know, that's honestly an unfair comparison. With licensed games, expectations are set way lower, even though Splinter Fate is $5 more than Hades, $11 if you want to get the DLC with Casey in it that recently released. Still, Hades had a lot of time in the oven, and it was in early access with consistent support and community feedback, so again, it's not too fair to compare. So even though I'm not comparing them, it's kind of nuts that even when trying to be fair and setting a lower bar for Splintered Fate, it still fails to clear the bar. At first it's fun listening to the turtles talk to each other and make little quips, but only a couple rooms into your first run, you'll start hearing them repeat lines. The bosses have a bit of variety and change depending on which turtle is facing them, but that also doesn't last much longer than 3 or 4 encounters with them. The game's story requires you to beat the final boss 8 times, but there's not enough variety of story nor dialogue to fill up those 8 times. That's completely disregarding the fact that you need to upgrade yourself to the point that you can comfortably clear the final boss that many times to beat the story in the first place. Without spoiling anything, I'll just say there is near nothing to experience when it comes to story and characters. There's only a little bit of chit-chat you can do with April and Metalhead back at the home, but they stop talking just a few runs in. Upon your first time running into levels, you get the chance to meet up with Casey and Angel, who is the vigilante known as Nobody in this universe, sporting that god-awful MCU tier costume I was talking about. I was expecting them to help me out or appear to give me goodies or be in trouble and have me help them out, talk to me in any single way, but they literally introduced them once and never appeared again until the end of the game. It makes going on runs and returning to the hub feel hollow and pointless. In something like Binding of Isaac, the game itself is more than enough to keep you entertained, but this game is fashioned after Hades, a game that heavily relies on your investment in the characters and story. And this game has next to none for both fans of the Turtles, and even less for non-fans. While its writing is disappointingly bare, I've always been of the opinion that a game can have zero writing and still be a masterpiece. So that being said, what are the gameplay and mechanics like? Well, luckily, they're a lot juicier and more interesting than the writing by a country mile. Like any roguelite or roguelike or whatever the hell, after your inevitable death on your first run, you come back home to find out there's a lot of stuff to upgrade and change around. If you manage to defeat Leatherhead, the first boss, you gain an artifact from him. These artifacts effectively alter what kind of boons you can receive on runs. Some artifacts give you more scrap from certain enemies, scrap being this game's currency. Other artifacts make specific powers more likely to show up, which encourages experimentation of mixing and matching different builds by increasing the likelihood of getting specific powers. These powers include Ooze and Fire, which are basically the game's poison status effect. You also have Water and Utrom tech, as well as gaining some additional ones later on that I won't spoil. These artifacts can be upgraded with Dreamer Coins, one of the 2 currencies for the hub world, the other being Dragon Tokens to upgrade abilities and artifacts, in the lair. Some upgrades increase your stats permanently, such as your run or dash speed, damage dealt, etc. Some you need to beat specific bosses to be able to gain special items from them, to be able to upgrade these specific stats. The items can only be gained by playing as specific turtles sometimes, so if you're looking to upgrade everyone, you have to play as everyone too in order to increase each of the turtles' specific masteries. While the turtles don't feel significantly different from one another, they do play just differently enough that you can have a favorite, as well as someone to focus on upgrading. Their masteries are this: Leonardo is built around his specials, Raphael is focused on critical damage, Donatello's playstyle revolves around defense and health, and finally Mikey's main attributes are his multi-hit capabilities and serving as support for your friends. Oh yeah, friends, something extremely important to mention. This game really, really wants you to play with a full group of 4, but at the very least, 1 other person. Otherwise, you'll find it to be a pretty easy adventure, unfortunately. The enemies and bosses scale up pretty drastically with just even 1 more person, and depending on their skill level, can make the difficulty significantly higher than if you play alone. It's a bit of a hassle keeping everyone in view of the camera if you're playing couch co-op, but if you play online, everyone gets their own camera, which would be nice if getting into a lobby and maintaining it without somebody crashing wasn't such a pain in the ass. Another problem with playing with friends online is that it screws with everyone's save slots. If you play with a friend who is further along the story than you, the game gets screwy and either resets your progress completely, or you have now unlocked things that you have yet to come across yourself. Still, I can't say it's not fun recreating what the Ninja Turtles would fight like. You all have to try and support each other and cover each other's weak spots, such as Mikey weakening enemies with his special, and having a stronger teammate hit the weakened enemy. Plus, death isn't permanent. If just one of you can manage to clear the stage, everyone comes back with a bit of health for the next stage. Multiplayer isn't bad whatsoever, and if you can manage to get through all the online shenanigans, it's a decent time. Though the decent gameplay and mechanics aren't without their faults. Buggy online play isn't the only place you'll find lacking polish. When you aren't randomly coming across bugs, some of which have at least been patched while I was making this video, like text not being inside of their boxes and menus, you're having to deal with enemies in the game. The main runs are decently varied and become stronger and more diverse the more successful runs you have. Each of the 4 areas, the sewers, the docks, the streets, and finally the rooftops, all have rotating mini-bosses, around 5 or so, which definitely keeps runs fresh upon revisits, even if they are a tad too easy. The bosses, on the other hand, are kind of a roller coaster of difficulty. You start off with Leatherhead, who's extremely easy to beat, and then you face off with Karai, who can change up her fighting style, one of which is throwing out huge trails of fire and little AoEs that make it hard to reach her. Afterward, you face off against Bebop and Rocksteady, who are also decently obnoxious, as well as having a hallway of goddamn mousers spamming the entire ground, as well as giant lines of electricity that do a lot of damage. I mean, seriously, look at this shit. Is this an action roguelike or a fucking shoot 'em up? How the hell am I supposed to dodge this shit? And when you do get to Bebop and Rocksteady, you have to fight them both at the same time. And you have to be careful not to take too much damage from one of them while you're focusing on killing the other. By the way, why does Rocksteady's minigun sound like Zurg's ball launcher from Toy Story 2?
You turtles need to warm up!
Anyway, the roller coaster of difficulty takes a near vertical dive when Shredder appears, who is honestly pretty pathetic. It's a near mindless fight with slow and easy to observe patterns. The hardest thing about him is that he regenerates all his health and it has a second phase, which is rarely fun, by the way. But it's worse here because he doesn't even change his moves. He just does them twice in a row or now spawns a little AoE around them. Thankfully though, you can beef up these fights and regular stages in general with shimmering portals. But do be careful. Read what the fucking portals say, because your handicap will be not just for this portal's run, but for the entirety of your run. My first time seeing portals, I went inside of every single one and ended up with a game that no one should be expected to beat. Everyone had extra shielding, everybody did more damage, I did less damage, I healed less, it was kinda nuts. But once you keep that in mind, it becomes a lot more manageable. These portals also extend to the bosses, like I mentioned, being called gauntlet fights. It's mostly just throwing in enemies and making everyone faster and a lot more spongier, unfortunately. The hardest one for me was Karai, because she just takes forever to kill. But Bebop and Rocksteady were decently challenging as well, in a more fun way, though Shredder is way fucking crazier in his gauntlet fight. Honestly, I wish this was his second phase in regular gameplay. Even if it is a bit overboard in trying to overwhelm you, I rather would have had that than just a completely deflating, easy final boss. Aside from the inconsistent difficulty, I'd say another weak point the game has is the non-existent feedback for taking damage. You can be standing on a pixel's worth of ooze or electricity, and you will not know until you notice your entire health bar is disappearing out of nowhere. Considering how many AoEs are in the ground, how many enemies are bum rushing you, and your friends' icons cluttering up the screen, this goes from being a little problem to a big problem real quick. And speaking of annoying fucking problems, whose bright idea was it to add weather effects in this game? And by weather I mean only fucking lightning. It is ridiculously obnoxious. The lightning is like sentient or something. It's always striking at your feet or trying to go in the direction that you're gonna go next. And it does a decent amount of chip damage, so while you're trying to focus on fighting enemies and bosses, you're just getting chipped all over the place. The worst part is that while this sounds like it should only be an occasional problem, it's rarer for a single stage to not have rain than the other way around. It adds up to an annoyance every time you get hit by it because it feels either random or targeted when it's something that you shouldn't even be worried about at all. Sure, it hits enemies, but that doesn't change much, and when you're playing with friends, somebody's gonna be hit by it at all times. And like I said, it does hit enemies, and something else that I really like about this game is that there's infighting. Who doesn't love that? It's a plot-relevant fact that everyone in this weird game of fighting to win Splinter as a trophy is that not everyone is on the same side. And if you leave them alone long enough, they can straight up kill each other, which is pretty funny to see and can give you some time to rest. I was going to try and segue into something else, but I do want to mention something that I got from my friend Ethan the Banana, who I want to thank for playing through the game to give me his thoughts on it. He's put more time into Hades than he has into maintaining relationships, so I was really curious what he would say about it. Of course, something he found poorly done about the game was that it's extremely easy to break it. By focusing upgrading your dash and damage over time, those, as well as specializing into ooze and burn damage, essentially poison effects like I said before, you can dash around and never even get touched while your enemies all die around you. And after just a small while, someone as stubborn as me who rarely experiments ended up abusing ooze and dashes without him even mentioning it to me. Anyway, I don't have much more to say about the gameplay. It's much more fun than the flatline of a story, which is just rescuing a princess with no twists or turns, but the princess is a rat. Stock standard jokes of Raph being a moron, Donnie being smart, and Leo and Mikey missing each other. They also mention that Mikey does a lot of puns. Each run is around 30 to 40 minutes depending on whether or not you take extra challenges, which is a good amount of time for a game like this. I ended up beating the game 15 times. Aside from playing harder versions of mini bosses and the main bosses, I just couldn't be bothered to try and find out if there really is more to Baxter's involvement in the game, something mentioned after rescuing Splinter. 1, because I don't care. The story is basically over once you get Splinter. And 2, any sort of inherent addictiveness roguelikes have ran dry in this game by the time you get to Splinter, let alone doing it 8 more times like I tried, without any new dialogue or rewards whatsoever. I put 24 hours into the game. Maybe the DLC expands upon the Shadow Figure's claims of more story, but either way it's not cool to dangle the possibility, then keep it locked away without any new content as you try to uncover it with additional runs. Again, I appreciate the variety, but with how builds can be so broken and enemies and bosses become sponges that deal a shit ton of damage, it's like Ethan said, you end up resorting to cheesy tactics, the biggest one just ending up with you waiting around as your opponent slowly chokes to death on the ooze you're shoving down their throat. Past the gameplay and its upgrade trees, there's just not much to mention. The art style is kind of plain and has that up-res mobile game feel, but at least the character portraits are nice, barring how weird April's nose is. The music is along the same lines, completely fine, but it's got nothing on the next game I'm about to talk about. Overall, this is a cautious recommendation, and really only for Turtle fans, as well as saying that you should not pay full price for this. Wait for Steam sales, they happen every other weekend now, so it won't take long. Splinter Fate isn't a bad game, but it's not a significant one. It doesn't really do any one thing really well. It just kind of left me feeling a little hollow because I wanted more in almost every aspect. But with that done, we arrived to the final sections of the video, and probably my most favorite by a landslide. Though, first I do want to talk about the show the game is based on, Shredder's Revenge. So here's hoping Viacom doesn't fuck my ass for trying to talk about the original 1987 Ninja Turtles cartoon. Despite my general disdain for modern pop culture and everyone who consumes it, I'm not actually that old. I didn't grow up with the original 87 Turtles. I grew up on 03 Turtles, who hopefully will get their own time in the sun, but a while back I decided to watch every single TMNT show, both as a refresher of 2012 and 2003, but to also indoctrinate my boyfriend into the franchise. Never having grown out of having the mind of a child will give you ideas like that, but only sheer ignorance of how many fucking episodes the 87 show had would have ended up with me failing to the sunken cost fallacy. 197 episodes. That is 96 hours and 30 minutes of unadulterated 80s toy-oriented slop aimed at children. For reference, this show is longer than both Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul combined. I may be used to wasting time. Like I mentioned, I've raced terrible games with my friend every Sunday. I'm the kind of man that will play an unfinished DS M&M's platformer for 12 hours straight. But this show was proving a mighty challenge to even me. That is, until I understood how to watch it. The first few episodes are kind of a misleading intro into the show, misleading in the fact that not only was there a coherent plot, but the quality and style of the animation was great and matched the iconic and amazingly done intro animation. As soon as it hooked kids with those really nice episodes though, the quality dropped right down a cliff into the territory it was seeking to live in, amongst the G.I. Joes, Transformers, and He-Mans of the world. Though that doesn't damn the show. Like I said, once I started watching it the right way, I realized it was perfect material for watching it in the same way you watch B-movies or torrent like Hollywood slop to make fun of. It was a show that was filled with nonsense. Sometimes plots made my head spin. The never-ending bevy of animation errors and corny jokes kept me entertained episode to episode. Sometimes it would randomly have really well-animated sequences like in the Tempest episode. The corny jokes, meta, and quite often full-on fourth wall break jokes are so bad that they're kind of endearing.
No way, amigo. Our bud could never do anything like that. Then you explain what he's been doing for this entire episode.
With a bunch of rotating animation studios working on the show to keep pumping out episodes to meet deadlines, as a kid I imagine you wouldn't notice any of the animation errors, stupid plots, or one-dimensional characters. As an adult that never grew up with it though, the endearing qualities come from the same place as those of the great B-movies I was talking about. Working with a budget and the time you have, the wink-wink moments from people working on it.
How can I talk to her when she's sitting right next to Sofo? And why am I talking to myself?
Wonderfully memorable and iconic voices of the Turtles, to the wacky monster of the week plots, the reoccurring gag of Shredder, Krang, and their two adopted children, Bebop and Rocksteady, keep getting stuck arbitrarily in random locations season to season. I mean, they get stuck next to the Earth's core, in another dimension, underwater, in Antarctica, and what's great is that it never even matters because they always travel to New York via these pneumatic tubes, basically just a drill with a pod attached to it, and they always just get to New York no matter what, so it doesn't really matter where they end up stuck. Future comics, which I recommend by the way, that are running right now, question why they never try to take over in places like Oklahoma or Ohio or some other desolate wasteland, instead of always picking New York, the only place the Turtles are ever at. Stuff like that that's perfectly cheesy and fun to make fun of, because it feels like the people making it are making fun of it too. But not in a bitter way, but more of a, we have to make this kind of slop for kids way, so we might as well throw in some dumb jokes kind of way.
Keep your eyes on this ridiculously expensive scale model I had built to demonstrate it.
Oh yeah, by the way, I was only joking about Shredder and Krang having adopted children, but I remember fairly on, my boyfriend and I were joking that Shredder and Krang argued like a married couple, and the two very special boys, Bebop and Rocksteady, were treated like disappointing children.
Just for that, you'll clean all of the Technodrome's lower decks.
Oh, all of them?
What was hilarious was noticing that the writers themselves began leaning into this dynamic, treating them like a weird family, often referring to Shredder grounding them for failing missions playing with toys, Shredder and Krang speaking as if they were cheating on each other through betrayals or working with other enemies. It was hilarious to watch it develop. Not to mention that the Shredder was voiced by James Avery, that's right, Uncle Phil himself, who was hilarious and sorely missed when he's voiced by a replacement actor, which happened a lot throughout the show for both him and every other character. Krang as well had a fantastic voice actor by the name of Pat Fraley, who claimed to have based the voice off of an exaggerated Jewish mother, which makes the gay married couple joke even more hilarious in retrospect. Though Shredder and his family are the highlight of the show, the Turtles ironically are less entertaining, but still very cute and occasionally funny unironically. Leonardo is so comedically heroic and well-intentioned that they picked an extremely innocent and cute-sounding voice actor, Cam Clark, to voice him. He's honestly my favorite due to Clark's performance and the sheer amount of cheesy lines they give him.
Don't panic, Michelangelo! I'll set you free!
Raphael is my second favorite, who is not only constantly telling awful jokes, knowing full well how terrible they are, but those jokes are being told by the iconic Rob Paulsen, who makes Raphael's lines a lot easier to digest and occasionally funny.
Everybody hates me!
No, little dude. Honest.
Hold on. I hate him.
My third favorite in this iteration is Donatello, voiced by Barry Gordon. He has a very unique cadence to his voice, and it sticks out in just the right way to make Donatello's crazily inconsistent intellect work.
The problem is every time something breaks down, I'm expected to fix it.
Donatello in this series is honestly the most accurate portrayal of what I imagine a genius to actually be like. He may come up with great plans, but he's also constantly inventing machines and gadgets that either explode or serve to kick off the plot due to how problematic his invention was. Another thing is the fact that he's funnier than Raphael. His nonchalant and sassy attitude really makes him memorable.
Show from the House of Ha-Ha! Are you kidding? I get my daily quota of bad jokes just hanging around you.
Him being memorable is something I can't say for my least favorite in the show, Michelangelo. Not that he's bad or anything, voiced well enough by Townsend Coleman. He just doesn't have much going on in terms of personality. He was primarily there to be hip to the kids, throwing out random phrases and non sequiturs and randomly speaking in Spanish for some reason was something that people did in the 80s and 90s. Anyway, yeah, alongside them is a whole side cast of friends and foes who mostly leave an impression and are voiced by equally strange and talented voice actors. With how episodic the show is outside of season finales, you can really pluck out just any episode and enjoy it. Just make sure to avoid the last two seasons like the plague. These Red Sky seasons tried to match the success of the first Ninja Turtle film, which had a grimy and more serious tone than the cartoon. These seasons were god-awful and felt longer than the entirety of the rest of the show, which is saying a lot considering how long it is. Generic, moody plots that seem to be written at gunpoint, with an awful new animation style that shamelessly rips off Batman the Animated Series. Even taking the iconic Red Skies from that show and pasting them into these last two seasons. Utter desperate trash just trying to keep the cartoon afloat in a changing landscape. It lost its B-movie-esque charms that made it fun and watchable for adults, and now could only be enjoyed through nostalgia goggles for very young children. Though the seasons predating the final two, like a lot of B-movies, are best enjoyed with other people. Like I mentioned earlier, I watched the entire series with my boyfriend. He's an artist and has dabbled in animation. I myself am aspiring to write scripts and have learned a good amount about how to tell a story. This being the case, we had nearly endless fun with every episode having the strangest of animation errors and so many random plot holes. Honestly, aside from color mistakes, a lot of them feel like they're trying to figure out how to fuck up the episode in a unique way every new episode.
This could put a serious crimp in our plans.
One time, since these were in the older days without easy access to computers, the camera filming the animation cells seems to have been knocked out of place for a moment, and they just left it in. I swear I almost got dizzy from the whiplash. Overall, I'd recommend picking random episodes here and there, barring the Red Sky season, and watching them with some friends for ribbing and enjoyment of quality, stressfully made trash. It deserves its legacy just based off its insane oddness alone. Anyway, that's about as much as I have to say about the show. How well did Shredder's Revenge capture this show's spirit? Well, let's take a look at, by far, the best TMNT game ever made. And honestly, one of the best beat-em-ups ever made. Shredder's Revenge. That previous statement, not even remotely hyperbolic. Single player, multiplayer especially. This is one of my favorite games of all time. An IP I love with references, cameos, in-depth but not overly complicated options for fighting, sprawled across multiple unique fighters, unbelievably well animated and beautiful HD sprites, as well as backgrounds that faithfully recreate the original show's look, while still feeling like they belong in an arcade game. Accompanied by one of the best video game soundtracks I've heard in a while. Turtles in Time on SNES rested comfortably as the best Ninja Turtles game for a long time, but it's literally been improved upon in every conceivable way. It's like comparing Mad Max 2 to Fury Road, it almost makes the other one obsolete. I don't say that lightly either, that game's still worth playing on the SNES, but Shredder's Revenge is everything a Turtle fan could want. Especially for you geezers who grew up on the original cartoon. I mean, just look at this unreasonably amazing opening for the game. It's setting expectations high before you even start playing, man. Brought to us by Tribute Games. Joining them as publisher is Dotemu, the developers, or at least half of the developers, of the fucking amazing Streets of Rage 4, which itself is a gorgeous and insanely fun game in a similar vein to Shredder's Revenge. It also did well in repairing the damage the vile and disgusting Streets of Rage 3 did to the poor franchise. Anyway, these people know what is fucking up when making a good beat 'em up when working together, which is no common thing. Like I said, beat 'em ups are a genre of game that went out of style, kind of like point and click games. People try to recreate it, they fail to see what was fun about them, and then give up. The closest we've gotten is hack and slashers and spectacle fighters, but deep down, those aren't the same as a simple beat 'em up. A simple beat 'em up doesn't need much, but can also get boring if it doesn't have enough depth. They don't usually require stories past rescuing somebody or trying to stop an evil villain. You know, stories are kind of ancillary for these kinds of games. Though let's get into the bit of story that is in this game out of the way. There's no real crazy stuff in this game, relative to any other Ninja Turtle game. Just like in Turtles in Time and a lot of episodes of the original show, the Turtles, and this time even April, are all watching TV when suddenly, the completely original and never before done idea of stealing the Statue of Liberty is told to us by Bebop, who has hijacked Channel 6. And that's about as deep as I'm going into it. Much like the 80s show, the plot is about as important as continuity in any sense. You chase around villains who possess parts of Krang's weird baby man mecha suit. The only interesting thing is that depending on who you beat the final boss with, you get a separate, unique ending for that character, including the DLC ones. It's fun for replayability, and every ending has a shot of the Statue of Liberty donning a red bandana, which is really cute, and another beautiful piece of pixel art matching the rest of the game. By the end of the game, you're fighting this goddamn cyber Statue of Liberty and a souped up Shredder, so it's kind of nice that you can see the Statue of Liberty is returned and all is well. With that plot out of the way, the game itself, well, I'm gonna do a lot of dick riding, honestly. It's just that good. I'll start off with the game's killer soundtrack, man. I can't believe I'm saying this, but it's honestly better than the Turtles in Time SNES soundtrack, which was one of my favorite OSTs for years. They mastered the art of genuinely catchy music that sounds like it could come from both Turtles in Time and just the 80s in general. I mean, listen to this.
Surf's up in the city. I'm fired up and I'm feeling gritty. Fists rumble in the air like thunder. This battle ride's gonna take you under. Like a shooting star blazing through the skies, and the fire burning in my eyes. Catching up to you, I'm bringing on the fire. Gonna blow you up.
And it even manages to capture a lot of the score of the original cartoon, such as this one. The soundtrack gets you pumped alongside all the rest of the game's elements. It's really everything you could want in a beat 'em up and more. All the hits have incredible impact due to good sound design and especially due to the animation, which is of such high quality it kind of blows my mind. From idle animations to every single attack and all the specials, all of them result with you feeling like every single attack you dish out has power behind it, which goes both ways. Especially with bosses, when you take a hit and go flying across the stage, you really feel it. Even with smaller goons, if they get a good punch in, you immediately feel the need to look up at your health bar. Health which is recovered, of course, via pizza, which is peppered throughout the levels perfectly. They know exactly the points where you'd need pizza, and once you memorize the levels, it gets kind of infuriating playing on harder difficulties and dying knowing you were one screen away from the pizza. The health pizza isn't the only thing you can pick up off the floor. Aside from double pizza boxes that heal everyone that's playing, there's two other kinds of boxes that serve as power-ups to aid you in moments when you're bum-rushed by a glut of enemies. If you make sure to smash any, well, smashable objects, mostly boxes though, or sometimes you even find them lying around on the ground, you can find a red POW pizza box, which puts you into a crazed spinning state like a Crash Bandicoot on coke. It doesn't last long, but it gets the job done when saved for the moment most enemies are on screen. The last pizza box is the green one. It's Autism Pizza? I don't know why they use that symbol, but anyway, the power of autism makes you able to use unlimited special moves for a limited amount of time. These pizza power-ups are cute little extra flavorings, but once you've been playing the game for more than 2 or 3 times, and trust me, you'll be replaying the game's story mode a lot, you realize how situational they are. Makes me kind of wish that there was a little more randomness as to when they drop rather than always being in specific places. Either way, the combat is fantastic. The beautiful background and sprite work I mentioned earlier isn't just eye candy. There's a lot of set pieces that allow you to use the environment against enemies. You can kick a camera to take out a row of enemies, push over a boulder, kick them onto spiked floors or beams of electricity. It's really fun and fitting for the 80s turtles, who often used everything except their weapons to fight their enemies, and more so depended on slapstick and any object within reach to win fights. As you continue to play the game, how many combos you get, how many enemies you kill, all start racking up the points on top of your player bar. Once you reach a specific milestone, mostly every 200 points I'm pretty sure, you will level up a maximum of 10 times. Each time you level up, you gain abilities. More health, additional bars for your special attacks, of which gives you a flying diving attack move, and at level 6 you even gain a dodge attack special, which is activated by dodging then pressing special mid-dodge, as well as some passive upgrades like extra damage and extra lives. This is one of the biggest reasons this game succeeds where other modern beat-em-ups fail. You upgrade just enough to give you a sense of progression, and by the end of the game, you learn how to best combine your special moves, regular moves, dash, and dodge attacks, that when you start up the game with a new character, it's almost unbearable to play with a level 1 character after having played with a fully leveled up one. It's a fantastic and simple way to enhance your fighting abilities, as well as health and damage output without slowing down the pace. Trying to get as many points as possible while also exploring the levels thoroughly, because as you travel along, you find character cameos who all want you to find specific items. If you accomplish a side quest, you get a bunch of points, which levels you up pretty well. And again, getting more moves from leveling up, it makes you want to try different moves. Juggle people around, bounce them off walls for higher combos, and at a certain point, the extremely fun and diverse movesets just have you flying all fancy like just for the hell of it. Well, everyone except Splinter. He fucking sucks. But everyone else is great though, and I don't want to spoil too many of their moves, but you'll definitely find a favorite. No one character is really exactly like the other, and some of the DLC characters are even more complicated, focusing on combos or mid-air fighting. Some characters just have new abilities altogether, like Mondo Gecko being able to dodge in the air. Hell, even when I was around 40 hours in, I was still finding out special little combos and moves I hadn't known about before. It's kinda crazy how much you can get out of this game. There is one more thing that makes this game stand far above most beat-em-ups, and that's the level challenges. While I stupidly deleted my original save because I didn't know starting a new game completely erases your previous records, these recordings have unfinished challenges, but I have the Steam achievements. And for one challenge in particular, a screenshot to prove I've beaten every single one of them. There's a plethora of different challenges, but the ones that are hardest to do for me are the ones to avoid stage hazards, avoid being hit, and especially doing the final boss without getting hit at all. These levels are meaty, and they are decently long and great fun in story mode, but playing through them in classic arcade mode, especially in the harder difficulty, without friends feels goddamn impossible. So going through an entire level in a beat 'em up where the entire premise is to punch and be punched, Jesus, it gets ridiculous. The hardest challenge though is one I mentioned before. Beat the final bosses without being touched by either one of them. I memorized this boss fight and it took a good couple of hours. I've never been great at games, but if you smash your face into a brick wall long enough, sure, you will never look the same, but you'll get through to the other side. Plus, I also found out afterward that Splinter isn't the worst character. It's apparently Casey, who was my favorite. He has the worst moves and the largest hitbox, so I accidentally did the most challenging version of this already super hard challenge. I have very few things to brag about, so let me have this. I also 106%ed Crash 4 with no guide, until they hit us with some delicious DLC, dude. I'm not someone who's super into DLC. I often find them being a way to put in content later on that should have been included with the game in the first place. But honestly, this was the perfect kind of DLC. The kind that feels like it fit in perfectly and was worked on after the game was done, not before. Dimensional Shell Shock, which is the name of the DLC, isn't just two new characters, who do provide some new fresh movesets to learn, and has a crossover with Usagi Yojimbo. I know that's not his name, by the way, but that's what they call him in the cartoon. By the way, check out the original run of his Fantagraphic comics, they're amazing. Anyway, as well as another TMNT staple, Karai, who was never in the original series, so they kind of made an OC version of her. But the other stuff in the DLC includes a full-on new mode, Survival, with all new beautiful locales, sprites, and fun gimmicks that can balloon your playtime, even past what the base game already provided plenty of with its challenges. This new mode even lets you play as boss characters. After every wave, you get two choices, usually between shards, which you have to collect a certain amount to upgrade in difficulty and gain a gem, or a power-up such as being able to play as those boss characters I mentioned, or doing and taking double damage, having an invincible taunt that teleports you around, and a good handful of other powers. They even added in new enemy types, some of which are really fucking annoying, but hey, there's no fun without real challenge. I also mentioned gems. It's part of a system where, depending on what level of survival mode you beat, and with which character you beat it with, you can unlock new stuff. Oh, the only things you can really unlock are extra color palettes for whichever character you're getting the gems with, but you can also level them up and gain more attributes as you do in the story mode. It really is addicting and fun to try to make it to the end of this mode. And I'm not going to spoil it, but it does have a fun little surprise at the end if you make it all the way through. Honestly, one of the only negatives is that the boss difficulty is a bit inconsistent. Some of the early bosses are way harder than the later on ones, such as Groundchuck and Dirtbag, Bebop and Rocksteady and their car, and especially the fucking Rat King, who are way harder than some of the other bosses that are at the end of the game, even though these guys are the first ones you face. Another little downside is that the final DLC pack they added in was just 2 more characters, Mona Lisa and Mondo Gecko. And while they're really fun and pretty cute, it kind of feels like they released the DLC in the wrong order and made the Lizard update a bit deflating. I mean, it also came with new music remixes, but I didn't really jive much with them. Ánimas and Gucci even did some tracks, but honestly the OG soundtrack is still way better than any of the remixes. This final DLC pack is way cheaper than the Dimensional Shell-Shocked one, so it's not that bad, but I do wish that they had released them in the opposite order. It would have made the final update being Dimensional Shell-Shock a lot more impactful. Oh yeah, random note, none of the DLC characters have an animation for moving up a stage, which is a damn shame, especially for Quayle, who I'm sure would have had a really nice one. Outside of those small nitpicks, it's still a phenomenal game with so much to offer past beating a decently meaty story mode. Arcade mode is extremely customizable, allowing you to change a ton of aspects of the game, though beating the game on gnarly difficulty is the one achievement that still eludes me. One day I will have enough friends to beat it, goddammit, but try as I might, for this video, I still couldn't do it. To me, that's just an excuse to keep it installed until I finally do beat it. This game is just amazing. There's not a single aspect of it that feels half-assed or fake in its love for the Ninja Turtles. This is a game that's amazing for anyone though, not just Turtle fans. It's something you can put on for ball-busting difficulty, chilling with friends while playing in the background, to grinding out gems in survival mode while you listen to stuff like podcasts or videos in the background. It's a little something for anyone who even has a slight interest in beat-em-ups. All this being said, I am so excited for Tribute's future games, especially the one they already announced, Marvel Cosmic Invasion, which seems to be channeling the classic era of Marvel vs. Capcom games. God, I wish it were a DC game, but I'm down to climb with Marvel as well. Well, Jesus, that's the end of this video. It has taken me way too long to finish this, considering I started in October 2024, when Mutants Unleashed came out. But hey, what matters is getting something done. It's not like I'm trying to become a professional YouTuber. This was fun to make, and you know, that's kind of what matters. I heard there's a last Ronin game in the works, and there's tons of other TMNT and just generally licensed games I'd like to talk about. But I think for now I'm going to head back to Wario after the Turtles took up so much of my time. But anyway, thanks for watching till the end. And thanks even if you just skipped around and got to this point of the video. Hope you enjoyed it, and have a good rest of your day.